Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
Wow, John. Did you hear that?
That was either Jason Aldean or former Christian pop singer Caleb Rowden. I couldn't tell who it was, Brad.
Did you hear those lyrics?
They're inspirational, and I can just picture you. Now, Brad, don't internalize this and think that I'm hitting on you, but I could just see you like riding a horse, waving a flag, maybe doing the Putin thing, you know what I mean? Like where he poses in these traditionally American Western poses on a horse. It's it's just so uplifting and patriotic to me, Brad.
John, you know what?
What's that?
It's so good. I'm going to play it again.
Please do.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
We're the ones to follow. Did you hear that line?
We're the ones to follow. And thinking about it now, Brad, that line of let's lose control, that's actually the mantra of Joe Biden's bladder.
His bladder has his own mantra. Okay.
Yeah, that actually they play that at his urologist office.
Okay.
Like when they wheel Joe in.
Okay, I put a lot of time and effort into that. Give me a 1 to 10 on that one, okay?
It's a 10. It's a 10, Brad.
See, if you've ever listened to the Glenn Beck show, hold on a minute, I got a cough. I'm sorry, still hangover from COVID, and that's been quite some time ago. Okay, if you ever listen to the Glenn Beck show, he has the world's best intros. And supposedly, a radio geek friend of mine tells me that he spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on doing those intros. And through the years, he changes them up from time to time, and they're like customized jingles, and got guys with they've got guys like the James Earl Jones voices. Welcome to the Glenn Beck show, that kind of thing. And when it starts, like, oh my God, this show is going to be great. And then the show comes on and it sucks. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, so do I play it one more time? No, we'll get tired of it. And.
It's really good though, Brad. It's really good. And here's the thing, I don't want to know how it was created. Remember, I'm the guy that this weekend is going to watch a little bit of WrestleMania.
Right.
I don't want to know what happens behind the scenes. I just want to enjoy the ride, Brad.
Well, first off, let me see if it passed the test.
Our sacred airwaves.
I say it is sacred airwaves.
They are sacred, and we will not desecrate them. I'm kind of like an Andrew Huberman girlfriend, whereas like I just want to enjoy the ride and not see what's happening in the background.
And let's ask Wayne. What does Wayne say about our new intro?
No stairway. Denied.
Oh, he doesn't like it.
Oh, Brad, you can tell it's Friday. Although we're this nonsensical on Monday through Thursday as well.
You know, your political friends, your political geekzoid friends, and I'm not making fun of them, but you would probably consider that a lot of your friends to be political geeks, correct?
Yeah, sure. I would. And I mean, by the way, I'm very selective in who I call a friend, but my political acquaintances, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And this is what they do. And some people, they eat, drink, and sleep this stuff. And once again.
Yeah, of course they do.
I'm saying nothing wrong about that. I love people who have a passion for what they do. I've always said that. I mean, you've heard me say that.
But your point was, what about them?
Well,
they just have to hear most of our nonsense and say, what are they talking about?
Right. Well, did they ever say to you, why don't you guys politics are serious business. Why don't you guys?
Absolutely not.
Why aren't you guys serious about this?
The cost of entry of having any kind of contact with me in my life is accepting me for who I am. And so, Brad, if you and I are going to talk about you being a little too hard on the Beaver last night, we're going to talk about that. If we're going to talk about Jason Rosenbaum's conversation with Denny Hoskins, which may or may not be in our top 3 today, we're going to talk about it. And you know what? You don't like it, don't listen to it.
Well, and John's referring to the fact that I'm going to tell the Leave It to Beaver story, the Larry Mondello version of that. Let's do that in the second segment, okay? So first segment, we need to take care of business. First segment is we start off the show all the time. John does this incredible website, johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, does it every single day of his life, has done it for 22 plus years. He scours the internet, finds all these links, and he puts them together on John Combest. Don't expect all sorts of flashing lights and banners and videos and stuff like that. It's very Web 1.0 kind of look, but it's very clean, loads very fast. Essentially, you look at all the things and you can say, oh, here's a story about blah, blah, blah. Here's a story about blah, blah, blah. You click on it, takes you to the link, which could be a newspaper article, which could be a press release, it could be a video, could be anything. He keeps you informed. Now, what we do is we start the show off every morning by giving John's top three. We have a guy who comes in and helps us out with that, and he comes up to the microphone and says interesting things like,
now on with the countdown.
and then he says,
in third place,
it's a week of postmortems, Brad. In the last couple days, we talked plenty about school district elections, and now is the time statewide where folks are doing a postmortem on the Kansas City sales tax vote. And I included this as number 3, Brad, because it combines two of your favorite things, and that is talking about the Kansas City Sports Stadium, which we talked about yesterday, and also your sleeper candidate, your recent favorite for governor, which is Bill Eigel.
I'm telling you, I mean, I think, you know, are you watching the polls? Is he getting any traction? I know he's probably, in most people's polls, let's be honest, he's probably number 3, isn't it, in most people's polls?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And also, let's remember that there's generally one or two groups that do any substantive publicly released polling. Now, candidates are doing their own polling, but they'll only release it if it's favorable to them. They'll only release it if it shows that they're picking up a little bit of traction. I think it's fair to say that the rank order for polling has always been in order of the candidates: Ashcroft, Kehoe, Eigel. But you know what the trick is, Brad? You know who polls really well? Undecided. And that's the angle for a Bill Eigel and even a Mike Kehoe as we go forward. But I wanted to pull out one quote from Bill Eigel here, Brad, and that is he said that he says, "I know of no path in the Missouri Senate where we're going to do any public funding of sports stadiums." And here's the quote: "I think that would be resisted vociferously and extensively." Well, so the idea now that the state would somehow come in and, you know, if we're going to throw Hail Marys at the Royals or the Chiefs, I think the appetite for that has declined. Go ahead, Brett.
Well, the thing about this is, you and I talked about this yesterday. I'm to the point where, first off, I was mistaken, and correct me, because I read the articles again after we got off the air. They already had a sales tax in place. Wasn't that what it was? There was a sales tax.
Yeah, but it's an additional sales tax.
But wasn't the part of the thing to continue the sales tax and add another sales tax? Wasn't that?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know that part of it. Well, no, I could be mistaken, Brad. I didn't know that.
I think
it was so you're saying it's to actually extend the existing sales tax.
I'll go back and look
not
at
add to it. I thought it was to add to it.
Well, I'll go back and look at it. I think it was an extension. You know how a lot of these things. The crazy thing about this is, a friend of mine who was in politics said, "Don't ever believe anybody when they say something's going to sunset, because it never
Yes,
did."
And Brad, you're right. I have the article up. You're right. It is the sales tax extension. So I was wrong about that. I thought it was an additional sales tax.
It's an extension. It's a sales tax they've already had. So in other words, they're sort of, and I hate to say this, but there's, you know, the teams are sort of butthurt because all of a sudden they get revenue that's not going to come around anymore. The revenue is going to disappear, okay? But once again, first off, we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? Do you think they have any problem with revenue right now after
I don't think so, no. Considering the number of NFL Taylor's version sweatshirts that I know some local chicks around here wear, they have no trouble with revenue.
Well, now the Royals have not done well. I mean, I can see some problems there. But so Bill Eigel, once again, and see, this is the crazy thing. Even though Bill Eigel does not like me.
That is not true, Brad, and we've put that beef to bed, but go ahead.
Well, I think he's the guy that's got the answers. I mean, you know, and people go, oh, he's too conservative. He makes sense. You know, there was one of the best ofs playing right before we went on the air, and I was making the point. Matter of fact, you sort of made the point, and I reinforced the point that I've been at several meetings where the mayors of St. Charles County have been there, and Len Pagano is a outright Bill Eigel hater. He does not like Bill Eigel because Len says, well, we got to have that personal property tax, and we need that money for parks and that kind of stuff. Once again, I like Len Pagano. He just got reelected. I think he didn't have anybody run against him, so that shows you how popular he is. And Bill Eigel's retort was if he went into a room with all the mayors, they would all gang up on him. All the mayors in St. Charles County, Dan Borgmeyer and Bill Hennessy. We don't like you, Bill. But yet, if in that same meeting, if there were the 400,000 residents of St. Charles County, they would go, yes, Bill, right? They would say,
oh, absolutely.
Because anytime you have to write that check for the car that you bought, 2 years ago that you already paid sales tax on, and you paid
double taxation,
and
Brad.
You paid license plates on it, and then you have to pay to keep that car. It's like, okay, hold on a minute, what is this?
It's outrageous. And by the way, folks who've watched the show and listened to the show closely, Brad, know that that's the second time in 2 days you've used the word butthurt. So, I mean, that's notable. We're on a 2-day streak with that. And by the way, butthurt is also what Joe Biden's doctors say when they talk about his loss of control.
Never mind. Once again, do your political friends like this show or what?
Up a notch to number 2.
Number 2.
Finally, Brad, we might rid ourselves of these dag-nab GOP caucuses, presidential caucuses. And that is if the Missouri Republican Party and the Missouri Democratic Party get their way, we will be rid of these caucuses and we will move to a primary system. The Washington Missourian has a piece up today. Democratic Party Chairman Russ Carnahan and the Missouri Republican Party's Chandler Haynes got together, and they are unified, Brad, in the idea that Missouri should go back to a presidential primary system. This will be a lot of good news to a lot of people. I know there's people who like the caucus system, and a lot of grassroots folks like it because only the most hardcore of the hardcore are going to dedicate half of their Saturday afternoon / morning to coming and sitting in a room with a bunch of other geriatrics and yelling. But for most normal people that want to make their voice heard in a presidential race, you want to go in, you want to vote, maybe you even want to vote early, and then just be done with it, Brad. So good news for folks who are caucus haters.
Okay, I'm going to ask you something.
Yeah.
And this is how I've always been. Before I really got into understanding the ramifications, all the politics and stuff like that. Whenever it became, hold on a minute. Sorry, can't shake my cough. I tried to hold that cough. Sounds like I'm throwing up, which I did not do. Anyway, whenever it came presidential election year, and it started off with the Iowa caucus, I always thought to myself, and you'd see news reels of a bunch of people in a schoolhouse or something like that, I always thought to myself, that might as well be a hee-haw rerun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. I just looked at that as sort of like, what a bunch of hillbillies. What a bunch of...
and then you ended up spending a lot of time in Iowa.
Right.
But you didn't call them hee-haw hillbillies then, Brad.
Well, but don't you think that us, as far as looking on the national scene, that it makes us look a little bit more respectable to have a primary than a caucus? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I generally resist the argument, though, that we should care what other states think about us. Like, I think that if a caucus system worked really well for us and it didn't work well for other people, then we should do a caucus system. But I think it says something when you have a majority of people who are active say, look, this is too much. We just need to go back to a simple presidential primary voting system. In fact, Brad, the idea of how we execute our voting systems is the number one story today.
Well, Aaron, but let me one more word on that. The caucus this year went very well. There was nobody arrested or anything like that.
It was statewide, very, very few issues.
Right. But John Combest is a legend in his own time because he was at the caucus. What year was that? 2012, where the police got called?
It was. There were fisticuffs. There was pushing. There was shoving. It was quite a scene, Brad, and it was an embarrassment. And the worst case of it all happened in St. Charles County.
I know,
it was embarrassing.
And you were there. Was it Francis Howell North High School? Was that where it was?
Yeah, I think, we were at North that day. Gosh, it's hard to think it was 12 years ago, but that was the piece that I talked about before that Matt Pierce from the LA Times wrote about it. And it was hysteria, Brad. I've never seen anything like that in the political, and I've been to national conventions. I've had my hand in a few things here and there, and I've never seen chaos like there was that day.
In here, I thought the people in Iowa, the hee-haw people.
It was Now, what we didn't have in 2012 is a bunch of hot chicks in jean shorts jumping out behind corn stalks and laughing at jokes, Brad. Maybe we should do that for our show.
I think we should do that every day. Yes.
Oh, we should definitely. Well, never mind. Go ahead.
See, you can't do those kind of shows anymore.
The number one.
And number one.
Brad Hildebrand's favorite Missouri journalist, Jason Rosenbaum.
I like that
In
guy.
the newest edition of the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air, had State Senator Denny Hoskins from Warrensburg. And Denny is running for Secretary of State. They covered a wide gamut of issues yesterday, Brad. And the timestamps are up for the conversation. It's one of the top links on my website today. Something really interesting from the interview, though. So in general, Rosenbaum talks to Hoskins about initiative petitions, talks a little bit about even sports gaming, talks a little bit about why Denny wants to be Secretary of State. And one of Jason Rosenbaum's coworkers, a woman named Sarah Kellogg, joined for the conversation. Now, Brad, Miss Kellogg had the best question I've heard in a long time on Rosenbaum's show, and I think it's a question that should be applied to every candidate. Are you ready for this?
I am.
She asked Denny Hoskins, and I wrote it down because it's verbatim. And I also wrote it down because Sarah Kellogg clearly reads her questions. Like, she does a really good job with prep. And you can tell when she asks a question, she's reading from something. The question goes like this. The topic, Brad, was hand counting of ballots versus whether you trust election machines. And she said, the push for hand counting ballots has been advocated by people like Mike Lindell, who has been criticized for circulating untrue conspiracies about the 2020 election. Is it really a good idea to be embracing proposals that are embraced by people like that? What I like about this question, Brad, is that it sets the precedent that every time someone comes on Jason's show, and let's be clear, this is not a St. Louis Public Radio show. This is Jason Rosenbaum's show that just happens to be on St. Louis Public Radio. And he happens to be so gracious as to let other people come in and ask questions. The next time a candidate is on Jason Rosenbaum's show, I think it sets a really good precedent, whether it's Cori Bush or whether it's any other Democrat. Let's hold them accountable for the positions that are held by other people. So, for example, Brad, if Cori Bush were to come on, I think it would be fair to her to say the push for a ceasefire has been advocated by people like, and then fill in the blank with someone, that's a target of public ridicule. Do you and then ask the question like this: is it really a good idea to be embracing proposals that are embraced by people like that? You see what I'm saying, Brad? I think that if we're holding Denny Hoskins accountable for somebody else's views that just happen to agree with him, then we should apply it to everybody.
John, do you know it's Jason Rosenbaum Friday today?
I do know that. Of course I know that.
And do you
Brad.
know...
It's on my calendar. I have it recurring on Outlook. Every 2 weeks it gives me a message.
And do you know that, who's going to be in his shows today?
Is it Nature Boy Ric Flair?
No.
Is it Terry Bollea, BKA Hulk Hogan?
You shall feel the wrath of Hulkamania.
No, it's not going to be him. It's.
Are we waiting for a drop? Is it going to be Elaine Shaw to say, "Welcome to St. Louis Public Radio"?
Say hello to oyster bunnies.
No, it's not going to be the Oyster Bunnies. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's going to be. Hold on a minute. Now you made me cough. Okay, I'm sounding like I'm dying. Maybe I am. Tony Lavasco on clemency for Brian Dorsey. Slews Ken Warren on voter apathy. And Karlie Kloss, we talked about her the other morning, on her passion for abortion rights. Now.
Oh, that's uplifting, Brad. And what is that from a St. Louis Public Radio post or something?
That is from his tweet, which was 1 hour ago.
Oh, nice. From Rosenbaum?
Yes, I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, good.
And matter of fact, when I tweeted 2 seconds ago, it's Jason Rosenbaum Friday, noon to 1 p.m. on 90.7 KWMU. After I tweeted that, his tweet popped up right underneath mine, and it actually has pictures of Tony Lavasco and Ken Warren and then Karlie Kloss. Now, we're over time.
Boy, that's a trio, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting. Now, I'm going to ask you.
Is that a... Never mind. Go ahead.
I'm going to ask you a weird question, okay? And this is nothing against Jason. I'm not making a hit, okay? Obviously, Karlie Kloss is pro-abortion, correct?
Right. Correct, yeah.
Do you think they would ever have a pro-life person on KWMU, on St. Louis Public Radio?
I think they would. Yeah, actually, I think they would. I think if you had a prominent celebrity who was coming in town, now you could make the argument, Brad, that they wouldn't be, that folks outside of a Rosenbaum would not give them the same treatment. Like they wouldn't. Can you imagine at St. Louis Public Radio how many people came out of the woodwork and brushed the potato chips off their bellies and jiggled over or sauntered over or rode their mobility scooter over and said, "Oh, Karlie, I'd love to have a picture." Oh. Like, I'm sure there was a lot of fangirling there. So maybe they wouldn't fangirl over somebody who's pro-life. But in fairness, I think that St. Louis Public Radio, if there was a prominent if John Hamm decided that he wasn't just going to rent his voice out to whatever candidate could give him $1,000, if John Hamm was pro-life, I think they would have John Hamm on to talk about abortion.
Let me make an official statement here on our radio station here. You women out there who are in your comfy shoes, you geriatric people out there, you people who are in your mobility scooters, your people who are eating potato chips and have all sorts of little crumbs on your stomach, I love you, and I'm glad you're here listening. John may not like you, but I like you. God.
And I love them too. And I mean, there's, you know what? In all those cases, Brad, there's just a little bit more to love.
I'm not going to touch that.